Welcome to the Cumbria Chamber of Commerce podcast, your regular update of business news and issues from around Cumbria. Find out how we support new business and help existing businesses to grow and flourish at cumbriachamber.co.uk. Now here's the Chamber's Business Engagement Manager, Julian Whittle, with the latest episode.
Hello, I'm here with Luke Donockley, a solicitor with the law firm Muckle, who is an authority on Brexit planning, and we're going to talk about what businesses should be doing to prepare for a no-deal Brexit scenario. Luke, the Chamber's Brexit advisors have been calling hundreds of businesses, and we're still coming across people who say, well, we haven't done anything yet because we don't know how Brexit's going to pan out. We don't know what to plan for. Why should businesses be preparing for no deal, given it's by no means certain that it's going to happen?
Because it might, is the simple answer to that. And the government certainly thinks so. You've got to bear in mind that the government has spent £8.3 billion getting ready for this, or at least made £8.3 billion preparing for it. Now, to put that in some sort of context, that's 10% of the education budget and about a sixth of the defence budget. So they are deadly serious about this. And people can obviously draw their own conclusions from that. But the conclusion that I would draw is that if they're getting ready for it, we ought to be getting ready for it too. And I guess, to put it in a more light-hearted way, it's rather like going sailing and you know there's a storm, but you don't take a life jacket because you think it's probably going to be sunny. You wouldn't want to be caught out without that life jacket. So why not just put the life jacket on?
So to sort of come at it from a slightly different angle, what are the risks of doing nothing?
Well, the risks of doing nothing are that your business suffers some potentially quite catastrophic harm. I mean, if you're not ready for the imposition of tariffs, if you don't know what's in your contracts in terms of, what do your contracts say about late delivery? How will that affect your business? If you don't understand customs procedures, so you're trying to get goods in from the EU or worse, goods out to the EU, and you're stopped by EU authorities at the port of Dover and at the port of Calais, and you don't have, say for example, the correct paperwork. That might have a big effect on your business. Now, there's a commercial problem with that, which is that you may lose money. But there's possibly a bigger problem with that, which is that you're going to suffer reputational harm and you can't really put a value on that. And if in the event of a no deal, your customers say, well, didn't you prepare for this? You don't want to be the business that's saying no. The other thing, of course, is that your no deal planning will probably be relatively low cost, but it won't be wasted. Because the government says, well, look, we want to leave the single market, we want to leave the customs union, we want a free trade agreement. And no deal is leaving the single market and leaving the customs union. It's just front loading it in a particularly dramatic way. So essentially what we're saying is if you prepare for no deal, you're actually preparing in a way for what our future relationship will be.
And so to extend from that, because another thing that we hear sometimes, or advisors hear when they call businesses is, well, we don't trade, we don't import or export, so we won't be affected. But it's more than that, because obviously your suppliers might be, customers might be.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, how many businesses aren't in the supply chain? Very, very few. Think about it as collateral damage. You're quite right. It's very easy to look at it and think, well, actually, I don't have customers in the EU. I don't have suppliers in the EU. So really, this is not going to affect me. But we're so interconnected. I mean, there's 40 years of integration here. And it's so easy to move goods and services across borders that you're probably being supplied with things you didn't even know came either from the EU or through the EU. So think about things like supply chains in modern manufacturing. Think about tariffs affecting prices. Think about where your funding comes from. Think about EU regulations that affect your products. Think about macroeconomic things, interest rates, exchange rates. Think about your supply of your workforce, warehousing capacity. Think about your customers or your suppliers failing because, okay, it's not affecting you directly, but it's affecting them directly. If one of your suppliers suddenly disappears, well, that's clearly going to affect you. And then even bigger things like that. It's not impossible that, for example, a no deal would tip us into recession. Think about consumer confidence. Think about liquidity issues in the banking sector. There are so many ways. And a great example to use is the financial crash of 2008. Most of us weren't in the banking industry, but most of us were affected by that.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we do leave without a deal, could it actually be an opportunity in the sense that businesses that have done the work and are prepared for that could be at a competitive advantage?
Yes, that's absolutely the case. And you just need to think about it really briefly to work out the logic of that. If you haven't prepared for no deal, then the chances are that whatever you supply or whatever is supplied to you may either stop or be disrupted. And that is going to cause consternation with your customers. If you can't supply something you've been supplying for the last 30 years because of a no deal, it's going to look terrible for you. And as I say, there might be some commercial, financial implications to that, some possibly quite dramatic ones, but certainly reputational ones. If on the other hand you've prepared for no deal and you're ready for it and your business knows how to deal with it, you're going to hoover up market share, you're going to be able to move into new markets. It might well be that you have a much better position to acquire businesses that suddenly become weak. There are all sorts of advantages to you, but you will be remembered as the businesses who actually managed to get through a no deal without any issues. And again, you can just use an example. If you think about some of the companies over the years that have had problems with not protecting data properly, the reputational harm to those companies has been terrible, but they knew what to do. The reputational harm to your companies would be terrible because you know what it is you need to do.
So, all right, we've covered why you should prepare, so we'll move to the how. You've developed a 7-point plan to help businesses prepare. Talk me through that.
Okay, so it could really be any number, and for some businesses, these 7 steps wouldn't necessarily work. It might be more extensive or a shorter process, and that's part of the problem with trying to advise people, is that everybody's business is different. So Brexit looks different for a Swedish multinational than an SME based in Cumbria. But there are some guidelines we can set out, a framework if you like. So the first one really is you should have some sort of steering group. It's just a group that's drawn as widely as possible from across your business that is there purely to think about Brexit related issues. And who is on that steering group is up to you, but some really good examples of people. If you're lucky enough to have a lawyer, an in-house legal counsel, they should be involved. Most companies won't, but most companies will have someone who deals with the contracts, who negotiates the contracts. That person is an excellent person to have on a Brexit steering group because they've got some legal knowledge. You definitely want someone from HR on there, because it may well be that there's issues with employment or employees, so you're going to want to have their input. Someone from the IT team who can help you deal with the ideas of data flows. Perhaps you're not particularly confident with that. Having someone on the IT team would be really helpful. But probably most importantly, if you can get it, is someone at board level, because then this steering group will be treated seriously. And we certainly found when we were advising companies about the GDPR, if preparing for the GDPR was a tick box exercise, you got what you paid for essentially. You got a poorly prepared business. Whereas if it was taken seriously and you had someone at board level on the steering group, you had much better preparations. So that steering group will have a number of things that it will need to do to get ready. One is it'll need to set its guiding principles. And really, it's up to the business what those guiding principles are going to be. We can't really tell you that. But to give you a flavour of it, if you rely really heavily on EU workers, your guiding principle might be, well, how do we secure an EU workforce in the event of a no deal? If you rely on intellectual property that is vested in the EU, you might think, well, how do I protect that? Because the laws around it are going to change. So the guiding principle of the steering group will be, what do we need to do to protect that? They'll have to conduct a business audit, which is essentially just looking at your business upstream and downstream, so not just at your business, but where you sit in the supply chain, and try to work out, where are we at risk? Okay, so it might not be your specific business, but it might well be that you've got a supplier who may fail, or who will struggle to get component parts that will be processed into a product that's being provided for you. How is that going to affect your contracts? How are you going to be able to absorb the cost of that? Will it be passed on to you? Can you pass it on to other people? There are so many ways that you could be essentially affected, and you need to look at that. And it'll take in things like tariffs and customs paperwork and regulatory compliance, and so on and so forth. Every area of your business you can think of, really. Once you've done that, you'll need to do a legal risk analysis, which will partly be looking at EU laws, although EU laws won't change quickly. that'll be a very slow process, even if we leave the European Union. But it will be looking at your contracts.
Because it's all going to be, all EU law will be enshrined into UK law on Brexit Day, won't it? And then divergence may or may not follow.
Yes, absolutely. So there's something called the EU Withdrawal Act, which basically is there partly because the government just didn't have time to do anything else, and partly because actually it makes sense that the laws are the same the day we wake up having left the European Union, so we all know how to comply with them.
Yep.
The UK will take the opportunity to change those laws, but as you say, that could happen over months or years. The big part of your legal risk analysis is really looking at contracts. You're going to go away and look at your contracts in more detail and try and work out, how does this contract help me, or how does it hinder me? Because once you understand what you can and can't do in your contractual relationships, you'll be able to plan for every eventuality. You'll need to use the results of that process. So have a look at it and say, well, okay, we know that the cost of supply is going to increase. What do we do about it? We know that supplier might fail, or we might have a problem using that logistics provider, or we might need that warehousing capacity. You need to go away and put things in place. And a really big, really simple, really easy step to take is doing due diligence on the people that you work with. Okay, so you need to be asking really tough questions of the people you rely on. So if you're relying on a business, send them a questionnaire with a series of questions. We see this in practice quite a lot. A lot of companies are doing it now, and you need to get on the phone to them and ring them up and say, why have you not filled that questionnaire out? Why have you not answered it? What is the gaps in your knowledge in relation to Brexit? Because you'll very quickly come to understand who has and hasn't prepared.
Yeah, and if they don't respond, that's a red warning light, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And it may well be that you can change supplier. It may well be you get asked those questions yourself. If you haven't gone through a process like this, chances are you're not going to answer those questions. And once you've done that, identify some external help, essentially. So do you need help from a lawyer? Do you need help from accountants, freight forwarders and so on? We're working in partnership a lot with the Chambers at the minute. The Chambers have got loads of resources that can help you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a high cost process. It probably shouldn't be a high cost process. You should be looking for advice where you can take it. So we've mentioned the Chambers, the CBI, the Institute of Directors. There's lots of help out there. And don't forget the business networks, the informal business networks you have in Cumbria, because it may well be you think, I know that guy, he can help me with X, Y or Z. Pick up the phone to them, and it may well be there's a quid pro quo and you can help them as well. And that really brings on to our last point, which is opening discussions. You need to talk to people. So that might be your customers, it might be your suppliers, it might be your employees in the end of a no deal, saying this is what's going to happen, these are the steps we've taken to prepare, you mustn't worry about this or that, this is what we're going to do to mitigate the risks. And a really, really simple way you can do that is to prepare a Brexit statement and to put it on the front page of your website. And it only has to say, these are the steps we've taken to prepare, this is the process we've gone through, this is what we think the risks are, this is what we've done to mitigate it, and these are the reasons why we will continue to be able to provide you with goods or services in the event of a no deal. Lots of businesses doing that now. It looks absolutely great, and it shows people that you are seriously preparing.
Now, we touched a minute ago on the advice, and there is a lot of official advice on the gov.uk government website, including some very detailed technical notices. What we've done as a chamber, because it's not always easy to navigate, and the search facility in particular isn't great, we've assembled a huge amount of information in a user-friendly format, and that's at cumbriachamber.co.uk/Brexit. Are there any other websites on Brexit planning that you'd recommend?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few. As with everything here, you have to be a little careful about where you get your facts from, because there's a lot of information out there. But I mean, some really good, well-tested sources that are business-focused and not politics-focused. So a great one is the CBI. CBI have loads of resources on the website. And really helpful. Similarly, the Institute for Government, the Institute of Directors, all helpful sources of advice. Always look for free sources of advice. There's lots and lots of help out there, but there is no substitute for looking closely at your own business and applying your own mind to it, because no one can really tell you exactly what it is you'll need to do. You are, after all, the experts on your business.
I mean, we tend to concentrate on the problems that Brexit throws up. But are there opportunities too, would you say?
Yeah, there are. I mean, there may not be immediately obvious to you until you apply your mind to what Brexit actually is. But it could be all sorts of things. It might be that when you go through this sort of risk analysis process, you realise that actually we've got particularly short supply chains. Perhaps you get supplied from a lot of UK businesses. Is that something you could possibly use against your competitors when you're pitching for business? Say, look, we are more robust. That might be an opportunity. You might have spare warehousing capacity, and it might well be worth a fortune, because one of the problems with Brexit now, as opposed to Brexit last March, is that we've got Black Friday and Christmas coming up, and the UK Warehousing Association is saying, look, we're at capacity. If you've got spare warehousing capacity, you might well find you can make money out of it. You might find that your competition goes out of business because they haven't prepared it. It's not a way you'd like to benefit from Brexit, but reality kicks in, and if businesses around you that are your competitors fail, you might be there to scoop up their market share. You're more likely to be able to do that if you've prepared properly. You can acquire businesses that have been weakened by Brexit, or assets from businesses that have been weakened. And then there's some really obvious ones, the ones that the government want us to take, which is supplying more products to the US and China and India and Russia and all these other places where we hopefully one day will have free trade agreements with.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on contracts before we finish, if that's okay. What are the implications of no deal for commercial contracts?
So, in one sense, then there might be no particular implication, as in the vast majority will just continue as before. For example, your contract suddenly won't become enforceable because we've left the EU. It won't suddenly be, EU law doesn't apply. Yeah. So your contracts, if you're in a contract, whether it's with a UK business or an EU business, you are still in that contract. The laws of contract still apply. Nothing is going to happen. But each contract is different, and it'll have to be judged on its merits. So you really have to think about what clauses it contains. It may be that you look at your contracts and you think, well, actually, I don't really need to do anything at all, because I can very easily get out of this contract. I've got a termination clause that says you can terminate on 1 month's notice without any liability. Something like that.
Well, I was going to say, what are the options? If a business discovers that they're going to be financially disadvantaged by Brexit, is it likely that their contracts might contain clauses that would allow them to walk away, to either terminate or renegotiate?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, there's two ways of looking at this. There's what the law says and what your contract says. So let's deal with the law side of things first. EU laws aren't going to change. UK laws that are made in the UK Parliament, not going to change straight away. But there is the common law, which is law that's made in courts. And essentially that's the way judges look at particular cases, make judgments about what the result should be, and then other courts follow. And you see patterns of behaviour forming down the years. So lots of our contract law is made in courts, things like rules on offer acceptance and so on. Now, the courts will probably not really help people in the event of a no deal, in the sense that one of the things that the courts have said over the years is we won't rescue people from bad deals. We won't rescue people from economic hardship. Just because they signed a good contract that's gone bad doesn't mean that you will be able to walk away from that contract. Yeah. So in many ways, the common law won't necessarily help you. If you signed a bad deal, the law is not there to help you out. But there might be things in your contract that can help you. So we've mentioned particular termination rights. It might be your contract allows you to walk away quite easily from your contract. It might be that there are clauses in there that deal with situations where, for example, there's a change in the price of your contract, or what happens if there's some sort of event that causes us to not be able to perform our contract anymore. Could that be Brexit? Might that help you? Well, it's possible. You'd need to have a look at what was in your contract. Yeah. And sometimes you have clauses in your contract that say, well, actually, if one particular thing happens, then this result will occur. So it might be prices go up by 10%. You might have a clause in your contract that says, well, actually, in the event the prices go up by 10%, you can renegotiate your contract. So that might be helpful, but you need to go through your contract and judge each of its merits. There's no one-size-fits-all.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Luke. That's been very helpful. You can learn more by downloading Luke's webinar, particularly on the contracts. There's a lot more detail on the contracts. And that's on the Chamber website, which I mentioned before, but I'll say it again, cumbriachamber.co.uk/Brexit. If your business has any Brexit related inquiries, we do have advisors now who can take your calls and hopefully provide the answers. The number to ring is 0845 226 0040.
Thank you for listening to the Cumbria Chamber of Commerce podcast. You can find out more about how we're supporting Cumbrian businesses at cumbriachamber.co.uk and cumbriagrowthhub.co.uk. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening and watch out for the next episode, which we'll be releasing very soon.